Hello, welcome to our podcast called Toxic Beauty, featuring Coco and Maria.
Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into how toxic beauty standards can negatively affect young girls. So for our first topic today, I wanted to ask you, where do you think this beauty standard originated from?
Well, we can first see the beauty standard starting to show itself in ancient Greece and Rome about 2,400 years ago, but it's more well known in the 1900s, specifically the 1920s. The beauty standard in the 1920s featured more of a boyish look for women, opposite of our beauty standard today. They wore bras that flattened their chests and wore clothing that made them look less curvy. Women even shortened their hair, leaving behind the long-held belief that long hair signified beauty and desirability. Soon after this, in the 1930s, it changed to a softer, more feminine look. It developed into more of a voluptuous, plumper look, featuring the Western beauty standard, which only centered around whiteness. So Maria, why don't you tell us about the more modern beauty standard and tell us what that's like?
Today's beauty standard is much more revolved around big breasts and big butt and big thighs and a skinny waist. That's also known as slim thick. And I think this beauty standard can be very unachievable for most girls and can cause to feelings of unwantedness or ugliness, or can make people feel like they don't want to be seen. This beauty standard can also cause a plethora of eating disorders and can make most girls feel upset and ugly and feel like they're not wanted in society.
I've also heard that this beauty standard revolves around different surgeries such as the BBL, lip fillers, and anti-age surgeries. Can you tell us more about that?
The BBL, also known as Brazilian butt lift, is a surgery that takes fat from all parts of your body, for example, the waist, if it wants to be slimmer, and puts it in your butt to make it bigger. This feeds into the idea of slim thick or an hourglass figure and just makes it more negative. The BBL also kills 1 in 2,000 people that get it, which isn't a good statistic in my perspective. This doesn't even begin to mention the millions of people that have botched surgeries.
Yes, and I've also heard about the bad experience people have had with lip fillers and anti-age surgeries. Although these surgeries are much less risky, a lot of people have experienced bad things happening once they got these surgeries. These surgeries can also be very expensive, with some of them costing upwards of $30,000.
Next up, I wanted to ask you, how are you affected by these beauty standards?
Well, these beauty standards have negatively affected me by causing me to be insecure about my body and thinking that my body isn't good enough for today's society. I also felt like I had to change myself to look pretty in today's society, which is something that I really struggled with. I also wanted to talk to you about your insecurities. Can you tell me about those?
I was really insecure about my glasses when I first got them because I thought people would make fun of me for being a nerd, along with my acne problems, which have gotten better, but I was still very sad about when I didn't get them, and I thought it would break the beauty standard.
This brings us to our next topic, which is how the beauty standard negatively affects young girls and women.
Beginning the creation of Instagram, beauty gurus, and influencers, suicide rates in teen girls 10 to 14 have dramatically increased. Over a 40-year study period, boys were 3.8 times more likely than girls to commit suicide. However, starting 2007, the rate in suicide of teen girls, that being 10 to 14 years old, has increased 12.7% per year. And a similar trend has been seen with 15 to 19, rates of suicide going up 7.9. Familiarly enough, 2007 is when social media started to become more influential, and I think that has something to do with the rise of beauty standards.
I agree. The beauty standard in the last 7 years has increased dramatically by 77% in girls, and I believe this also has something to do with the beauty standard. Another thing I've noticed is how big other mental issues like depression and anxiety have gone up in 2020. Many girls who have reported having depression have said it's because of social media and these beauty standards and the pressure social media gives on young girls to look a certain way. And I think that this is completely true.
Another thing I wanted to add was the spike in anorexia, bulimia, and other eating disorders since this beauty standard has become more viral. Anorexia nervosa, often called anorexia, is an eating disorder characterized by a normally low body weight, an intense fear of gaining weight, and a distorted perception of weight. Bulimia is an eating disorder that is characterized by uncontrolled episodes of overeating called binging. This is followed by the pursuing methods such as vomiting or misuse of laxatives. I believe many teenage girls can acquire these eating disorders by looking at people on social media that are skinny, have an hourglass figure, and they themselves wonder, what can I do to get that? And many think the answer is an eating disorder.
I think people get anorexia because when people see models on social media or in magazines, they think, well, if they're skinny, then I have to be skinny too. And they themselves try to look skinny and develop an eating disorder.
Many young girls develop bulimia due to anxiety, and I believe that this anxiety could be caused by beauty standards, school, etc.
Many people, specifically young girls, have the idea in their brain that natural features like pores, acne, or even smile lines, which is something that I find weird that people are insecure about. So people will believe that these normal features are not normal and call them ugly, which is very toxic because most people have those features.
Our next topic is covering why kids don't look like kids anymore and how the preteen era has gone extinct.
One reason I think the preteen era has gone extinct is because many young girls are trying to look like Instagram models like Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner, who are way older than them. When these young girls try to mimic the appearance of old people like Kim Kardashian and Kylie Jenner, they will end up looking older than their age, and this will cause people to believe that kids looking like kids isn't normal or it's cringy.
I remember when I was 9 and 10 years old, wearing makeup was seen as a big girl thing, and we shouldn't do that until we're 15 or 14. Now, as a 13-year-old, I see many of my peers and younger wearing full faces of makeup to school. I think that the sexualization of young girls has drastically increased from the last 10 or so years.
I agree. I've seen many girls under the age of 10 years old sexualizing themselves on apps like TikTok and Instagram for the validation of men. Many young girls don't see the problem with sexualizing themselves on social media, but this can have a really negative impact on them as they grow old. There's always the possibility of the wrong person seeing the wrong post and saying creepy stuff or even hurting them in one way or another. We have to teach young girls to be safe on social media since many predators can go after them, especially if they post sexual content like I see many posting. Our next topic is going to be about how social media amplifies the beauty standard and how Facetune and Photoshop have become so realistic to the point where you can't tell real from fake.
I think that social media drastically amplifies the beauty standard because of influencers and the amount of influence they have on people. These influencers are confusing young girls and maybe even young men all around the world into thinking that this is perfection, this is what you want to be, this is everything you need. But they are just instilling a toxic mentality into these teenagers' mind.
I also think that social media amplifies this because social media is something that everybody has access to nowadays, and not many people can separate themselves from it.
I feel like Photoshop in the recent years has become much more realistic and much more necessary in social media posts. Many young girls edit their pictures with Facetune, Photoshop, etc. to make themselves look more desirable. This is turning into a vicious cycle where one person does it and another person finds out and then they do it and the cycle repeats. And it's just getting stuck in a toxic whirlpool of fakeness and lack of identity.
When people get things like plastic surgery or use Photoshop, other people will see and think that what those people are erasing is wrong and think that that person is real. So that will lead them to be insecure and making them want to edit their own photos for online validation.
And now we're going to wrap up for our podcast. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. and we hope that you thoroughly reflect and think through our subject. Have a nice day.
Remember to always be kind to people and not judge others on social media. And try not to add yourself into these negative stereotypes of beauty. And try not to add yourself to these harmful trends that can make the beauty standard more tough and more hard to break through for other girls like yourself. Thank you for listening to our podcast.